We usually think poverty is the result, but Nobel laureates tell us poverty is precisely the cause. It is the root of a series of wrong decisions. Those behaviors we blame on laziness and short-sightedness are actually ingenious survival strategies under extreme pressure. Today we will deeply read the nature of poverty. It is not just a book, but more like a key trying to open a door we thought we knew but never truly understood. When we talk about poverty, what are we talking about? Is it the cold numbers and statistics, the distant faces and news footage, or that faint sense of relief deep inside? Thank goodness it's not me. But today, I invite you to do a thought experiment. Temporarily set aside all preconceived judgments. Forget labels like lazy, short-sighted, or lacking ambition. Imagine if your whole world was like an endless game of whack-a-mole. Just patch the whole of medical expenses. Your child's tuition fees pop up. It's barely scraped together meal money. The roof starts leaking again. Every ounce of your energy, every second of attention is drained by these constantly emerging crises. What would your life look like? This is the real daily life hundreds of millions of people worldwide are facing. Nobel economics laureates, Abhijit, Banerjee and Esther Duflo are like two most patient detectives, taking us deep into the core of this game. They spent 15 years traveling to the poorest corners of the world, not to give another lofty theory, but with scientific experimental rigor to listen, observe, and verify what the truth of poverty really is. They discovered the nature of poverty is an interlocking system. It is a set of suffocating survival rules, a psychological battlefield that distorts decisions, but it also contains solutions we never imagined, extremely clear ways to break through. Today let's explore the first and most fundamental reality revealed by the nature of poverty. When we talk about poverty, what images come to your mind? Is it dilapidated houses, children without enough to eat, or the hardship of toiling in the fields? These are all correct, but they may just be superficial phenomena. The first part of this book acts like a patient guide leading us through these surface appearances deep into the daily lives of hundreds of millions living in global poverty. It's personally experienced the invisible yet incredibly strong net that surrounds them, which we call the survival trap. Imagine if your life was like walking a tightrope, not over a bottomless abyss, but above a shallow pit filled with sharp spikes. You don't need a single major disaster to fall. Any slight loss of balance, a cold, a delayed rainfall, a flat tire is enough to make you fall, getting scratched all over by the spikes. And the most terrifying part is, once you fall, you find it extremely hard to climb back onto that tightrope, because all your strength and resources are used to deal with the wounds and pain. This is the dilemma of poverty. It's not a static condition, but a dynamic, continuous struggle, an exhausting process. The authors of this book, Abhijit, Banerjee, and Esther Duflo, through over a decade of field research, tell us, for those in extreme poverty, their primary life goal often isn't development, not even becoming wealthy, but the simplest two words: survival. Every day they must make choices amidst countless uncertainties and risks, and their resources such as money, time, attention, are so scarce that minor fluctuations in any area can trigger a systemic collapse. Take health for example. For many of us, a flu means taking 2 days off, taking some medicine, drinking more warm water. But for a daily wage laborer in rural India, if he doesn't work for a day, he earns nothing that day. He has no savings because yesterday's earnings just bought today's food for the family. He might go to a low-cost but poorly equipped rural clinic where the doctor might prescribe inappropriate but expensive antibiotics. To pay for the medicine, he might have to turn to the village moneylender, enduring the astonishingly high interest rates. So this illness not only exhausted his meager savings but also plunged him into debt, And to repay the debt, he had to drag his unhealed body back to work the very next day, which could worsen his condition. You see how a tiny risk can topple like dominoes, instantly shattering the delicate balance of life he struggled to maintain. Now let's talk about food, we might think. Since money is tight, why not buy the cheapest, most filling and nutritious options like bulk grains and basic vegetables? But reality is often heartbreaking. The author found when the poor's income increases, they don't prioritize buying more or more nutritious food. They might opt for more expensive, better-tasting, lightly processed foods or simply snacks and sodas advertised on TV. This seems irrational, right? But if we put ourselves in their shoes, we can understand. When your life is filled with bitterness, monotony, and despair, the immediate joy and comfort from a sweeter bowl of rice or a sugary soda is incomparable to a distant and vague healthy future. It's a pitiful yet real need for dignity and pleasure under immense pressure. As poverty strips away not just health, but also the ability and willingness to choose health. Finally, let's look at the institutional and market environments they face. If you're poor, banks' doors are almost closed to you. You can't access Luna's startup funds to begin a business, or even get an emergency loan to tide over tough times. Your choices often narrow to informal, terrifyingly high-interest lending channels. Similarly, many services you purchase like water, education, healthcare, are often low quality and expensive. Because you can't afford bottled water, you buy from water vendors. Unit prices end up much higher than tap water in wealthy homes. Because you can't afford tuition or need children to help with farm work, they might only attend a public school where teachers frequently skip classes. The quality of education is greatly diminished. It's as if you live in a world where a poverty tax is everywhere, anything, because you are poor, so you will ultimately pay higher costs and prices than the rich. Therefore, friends, the picture painted for us in the first part is grim. The essence of poverty is first reflected in this day-to-day, high-frequency, multi-dimensional struggle for survival. The poor are not lazy or stupid. On the contrary, they are meticulous survival experts under extremely harsh constraints, striving to keep their families alive. But sadly, all their shrewdness and efforts are merely to maintain the status quo, to avoid falling into a deeper pit, rather than to invest in the future, to climb to a new level. So their thoughts and actions are firmly locked in the present, and all these seemingly short-sighted behaviors are precisely the inevitable results shaped by their environment. So a natural question arises: does this predicament lead them to make decisions that we see as irrational? Or do their irrational decision-making patterns cause them to be trapped in this predicament? This is like the chicken and egg problem, and this is exactly the core we will delve into in the next part: the logic of the poor. We will uncover together, under the heavy pressure of the survival trap, what subtle and astonishing changes occur in the human mind and decision-making system. In our last discussion, we witnessed together the harsh reality of poverty. It is a day-to-day battlefield for survival. Every unexpected blow could push a family into a deeper quagmire. We see the poor seemingly caught in an inescapable cycle. Because they have no money, they cannot invest in the future. Because they cannot invest in the future, they will never have money. This leads to a deeper and more easily misunderstood question: why don't they try to break this cycle? Why don't they save money? Why not vaccinate their children with free vaccines? Why would they rather buy a TV instead of more nutritious food? If we only stand on the shore, watching those struggling in the whirlpool, it's easy to arrive at a simple and cold conclusion. It's because they are lazy, short-sighted, or lack rationality. But the most valuable aspect of the book Poor Economics, and its most humane contribution, lies in how it completely overturns this condescending perspective. The authors use extensive, rigorous experiments and data to tell us, no, that's not the case. Many choices of the poor do not stem from inherent character flaws, but rather from a kind of shrewdness, or even the only viable logic of survival, formed under conditions of extreme scarcity and pressure. Today, let's unravel this seemingly paradoxical, yet actually inevitable, logic of the poor. Imagine your brain as a computer's processor. For people who are well off, their processor has enough memory and computing power to handle long-term planning. Like whether to change jobs next year, how to invest the child's college fund, or where to go on vacation. Their lives are affluent, so their cognitive bandwidth is also ample. Now, please imagine a person living in extreme poverty. Their processor is flooded with countless pop-up alerts. Where's tomorrow's meal money? The child's cough seems worse. What to do? The loan interest is due again tomorrow. Will the employer suddenly let me go? Each of these alerts is extremely urgent, demanding immediate attention. All their cognitive bandwidth is occupied and exhausted by these pressing survival issues. This state has a specific term in behavioral economics: the scarcity mindset. Once people fall into this mindset, their attention becomes highly focused on urgent but often unimportant matters, while neglecting things that are important but not urgent. It's like a person drowning. All their attention is on the next breath. You can't expect them to think about how to keep warm after getting ashore. For the poor, the scarcity mindset is an inevitable product of coping with a harsh environment. But at the same time, it is also a terrible trap. It leads to a significant decline in cognitive ability and executive control, making them more impulsive and less able to stick to long-term plans. In other words, poverty directly causes people to become less cognitively capable and less self-disciplined. This isn't because they were born that way, but because the heavy pressure of survival deprives them of the luxury of long-term thinking. This perfectly explains that classic dilemma: why don't they save money? Because the essence of saving is to deal with future risks. But for those with a scarcity mindset, the future is too vague and distant a concept, far less real than immediate needs. When your child is crying from hunger beside you, or when you face a consumption temptation that offers immediate pleasure, hiding away a thin banknote for an uncertain later requires immense mental strength. This isn't a lack of willpower. Rather, their willpower has already been depleted in the day-to-day negotiations for survival. Their decisions prioritize how to make the painful present slightly more bearable. This is a form of emotional self-healing, and also a faint rebellion against a desperate reality. Similarly, we can understand their ambivalent attitude towards education. Many impoverished parents are not unaware of the benefits of education, but they face an extremely uncertain gamble. Sending a child to school means an immediate loss of a laborer's income, and requires continuous investment for over a decade. And whether the child ultimately finds a good job is a matter of probability, full of variables in between. In contrast, having the child work now to earn a meal is a certain, immediate benefit. Faced with great uncertainty, choosing the certain immediate gain is a risk-averse rational strategy, even though, in the long run, it blocks the next generation's path upward. Therefore, we must deeply realize that the decision-making system of the poor operates with a high discount rate. Their brains are forced to apply a very high discount to the future. Future $100 might be worth only $10 today in their value system, or even less. Therefore, any investment that requires cost now, with returns in the distant future, whether education, health, or savings, seems like a bad deal to them. Hearing this, our mood might become somewhat heavy. We find that poverty is not just a material deprivation, but also a psychological burden and a cognitive trap. It is an invisible prison shaping the thoughts and behaviors of those inside. And these shaped thoughts and behaviors in turn reinforce the bars of this prison. So, does this mean despair? Is poverty an unbreakable curse? Of course not. Only by understanding the true root of the problem can we find the truly effective key. And this is exactly what we will explore next. The most exciting part, the path to breakthrough. We will see how small, precise, and empathetic interventions can help people break this cycle and unleash the immense energy within them to pursue a better life. We have collectively undergone a heavy yet necessary baptism of thought. We first empathized with the suffocating survival trap of poverty, and then deeply understood how under such pressure, human decision-making logic is distorted and shaped by the environment. At this point, we are almost overwhelmed by a sense of powerlessness. This cycle is so robust, seemingly unbreakable. But it is precisely based on this deep understanding that the author of Poor Economics points the way for us. If we understand the true root of the problem, we can find precise leverage points, using minimal effort to help people pry open the door of the trap. This final part is about hope, about solutions, about how we can do better. In the past, many poverty alleviation policies were ineffective or even failed, often due to an arrogant, ivory tower approach. Designers sat in comfortable offices crafting grand plans, completely ignoring what we discussed in the first two parts, the specific realities and complex decision-making psychology of the poor, either simply throwing money or forcibly imposing what we think is good. The result: free mosquito nets might be used as wedding veils, poverty loans used for wedding ceremonies, newly built schools without teachers. These failures are not because people are ungrateful, but because these solutions completely disregard their real lives, their doubts, their pressures, and their minds occupied by a scarcity mentality. What Banerjee and Duflo advocate is an evidence-based, humble, nuanced microengineering. Its core idea is not to attempt solving all problems at once, but to identify key, small pain points through scientifically validated, subtle interventions. Help lower the threshold for taking correct actions, enabling people's own strength to be unleashed. This isn't like a surgical procedure, but more like perfectly fitted crutches, providing support when you're weakest so you can eventually walk on your own feet. Let's look at some compelling examples. Remember the time inconsistency and high discount rates we discussed? Or people know saving is important, but simply can't resist current desires for a vague future. What to do in Africa? Researchers introduced a simple product called a savings box, a locked box with only a small coin slot. This seems extremely basic, right? But it cleverly utilizes behavioral psychology. It makes saving easy and withdrawing difficult. This adds a commitment mechanism, helping people overcome impulsive spending urges. So astonishing. This simple tool significantly increased people's savings rates. See, no need for endless preaching, just a clever design that works with human nature rather than against it. Take health issues for example. We know vaccinating children is the most effective and economical way to prevent diseases. But why don't many mothers do it? It's not because they don't believe in science, but because the journey to the clinic is long and time-consuming, possibly meaning a day without income. Clinic nurses might be unfriendly or simply not available. They might worry about vaccine side effects. These seemingly small costs and uncertainties weigh heavily in their decision-making balance. So some organizations improved their strategies. Instead of waiting for mothers to come, they organized mobile vaccination units to actively visit villages. They not only provide free vaccines but also give a small bag of lentils as an incentive. This bag of lentils compensates for the mother's travel time and potential income loss, making the trip a worthwhile deal. It is this small bag of lentils that significantly increases vaccination rates, saving countless children's lives. This is the power of nudging. A gentle push can change the course of behavior. The same applies to education. Proving education quality doesn't always require rebuilding the entire system. India, a study found the biggest problem isn't that children don't go to school, but that the teaching pace far exceeds the level of children with weak foundations, causing them to fall further and further behind until they eventually give up entirely. So a program called Teaching Assistance was launched, recruiting educated women from villages to provide 1-hour daily tutoring for children struggling to keep up, focusing on the most basic reading, writing, and arithmetic. The result: these children's academic performance improved dramatically at a very low cost. This method didn't change the curriculum nor replace the teachers. It simply filled the most critical gap. Therefore, the path to overcoming poverty doesn't always require grand revolutions or massive investments. What's needed more is wisdom, patience, and empathy. It requires us to humble ourselves, truly listen, observe, and understand the realities and decision-making logic of the poor, and then design solutions that resonate with them. These solutions might make good choices easier, such as automatically enrolled insurance plans, providing timely feedback and rewards like small incentives for patients who take their medication on time, lowering the barrier to start such as offering a free sample of fertilizer for first-time use, adding a bit of certainty like ensuring clinic nurses are on duty. Now, these interventions may seem small, but they are applying force in the right direction. Okay, they are not fighting human nature, but helping the better side of human nature prevail. And they help people save that precious cognitive bandwidth, giving them the chance to think about next week, next month, or even next year. Ultimately, the biggest takeaway from the book, Poor Economics, is a shift in mindset. Poverty is not a problem about them, but a subject about us. It tests whether those of us with more resources and choices are willing to devote enough wisdom and sincerity to build a more inclusive and considerate system. The goal of this system is not charity, but empowerment. Not making choices for them, but creating conditions for them to make better choices. When we understand the survival trap, when we comprehend the logic of decision-making, we finally find the path to breakthrough. This path requires no grand words. It is paved by countless well-intentioned, scientific and subtle improvements. It tells us, creating a world without poverty is not an unattainable dream. It begins with every rigorous inquiry, every thoughtful design, and every empathetic push. Okay, and this is the most valuable legacy this book leaves to the world.